Now more than ever, transportation business owners need industry experts at every stage in their company's life cycle. We bring them to you in the hot seat.
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney, and I'm very excited about our show today. We have Max Farrell, CEO and co-founder of Workhound with us. Max, welcome to the Hot Seat.
Thank you, Spencer. Great to be here.
Well, hey, before we heat things up, why don't we just take 30 seconds, tell us a little bit about Workhound, what you do, and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Workhound is a real-time feedback platform for frontline workers, and our beachhead focus has been trucking, where you all know that there's a really high turnover rate. So when we started the company over 5 years ago, we saw that a lot of guys are quitting because they don't feel respected and they don't feel like they have a voice. The only option historically had been exit interviews or annual surveys, which is either an autopsy or it's too slow, because in this business, a guy can be happy on Tuesday, fed up on Wednesday, and quit by the end of the week. So what we did with Workhound is build a real-time feedback loop where companies can be proactive, understand the issues of their people, and be able to address those before somebody winds up quitting the company. What's been really rewarding for us is that we've got over 50,000 drivers on the platform now, at companies that have thousands of drivers or hundreds, and have seen companies see a reduction of turnover by up to 30%.
Well, I think that alone is going to get the attention of some folks in our networks today. So let's dive right in, sir. So, hey, you mentioned the problem. Why is there a driver turnover problem right now?
So I get asked this question a good bit, and really, I think the most succinct way to say it is that the entire burden of the supply chain is on a driver's shoulders, and there's not much that they can do about it. So you think about it, it's incredibly frustrating. A driver is told, get this freight from point A to point B, but they can't control the hours of the service. That's set by the government. They can't control the truck speed. That's governed. They can't control the construction or weather or traffic, or when a shipper loads or when a customer unloads, whatever it may be. They can't control any of these things. So that's incredibly frustrating. And a lot of times it's just assumed that, okay, these guys just do their job. So because of these assumptions, communication is lacking. And so really it comes down to inefficiencies in the supply chain and figuring out how do we improve communication between drivers and all these different stakeholders.
So it's a big problem, and many are trying to address it. What are companies in the trucking space and logistics space doing right now to address driver retention?
A bunch of things. I wish there was a silver bullet to tackling this problem. A bunch of people do, but there's not. So it's important to figure out, where do we fire the buckshot? And so as we look at our data across the industry and all the feedback we've gotten over the past year, we saw that some of the top themes were around logistics, which is around operations challenges and the movement of freight, equipment, which is not only a driver's tool, but also their home to at the end of the day. People was another big challenge that we saw, especially dealing with driver-facing staff and the lack of empathy. You got young people that are the boss of drivers, and that's something that needs to be looked further into. And then pay. And really, pay is a communication issue, where 41% of pay comments are about questions. So those are some of the top things that we've seen as far as what are the friction points causing drivers to look for something over there.
That makes sense. So, I mean, it sounds kind of like an obvious or maybe not an obvious question. It's just, do the drivers want to be retained? I mean, what are they thinking?
Well, I don't think anybody goes to work every day and says, you know what, I'm just going to give it my half. I don't think many people do that. Like, most people want to go in and say, I want to do my best work. I want to be at a place where I'm challenged and fulfilled, and really don't have to deal with any nonsense. As I think about, there's really three things it takes for someone to want to stay at a company, whether it's inside an office environment or on the road. And it's that, is your pay enough to where money's off the table? Do you like the team that you work with, to where like you aren't running into challenges? And then the third thing is that, do you feel like you're learning and growing and developing? And if all those three boxes are checked, it's really hard to leave a place. If some of those things are missing, then people are going to start to look elsewhere. So really, it's important for companies to ask, are we checking those boxes for each of our people?
Do you find that when those boxes are checked, that people are having issues with driver turnover?
Well, a lot of them are wind up being missed. So, like on the pay side of things, the pay structure in trucking is one of the most convoluted pay structures in all of North America. Yeah, it's for a lot of people that are probably listening in right now, they're on salary. It's really simple. You get the same amount of money every week, but drivers have the variability of things like what is their cents per mile, how many miles are they running, what are some of the inconveniences that they're getting paid for, like detention or tarping if they're in flatbed. There's all these variables that go into what that amount is, and that can get really confusing. So if those sorts of things aren't settled and aren't agreed upon and the expectations aren't aligned, people are going to go look for greener pastures if they feel like trust has been broken.
It totally makes sense. So, your world and my world, it kind of collides when it comes in the M&A space, because we have, part of the driver or one of the drivers of M&A is dealing with this problem. The constant change, you can't grow without drivers. So part of acquiring a company is you get the driver base, you get the revenue, you get all of that. However, as you have explained to me in other conversations, that, hey, this is still about transferring risk from one organization to another. And if they're not addressing some of these issues around driver retention, maybe it kind of limits what can happen there. So what are you seeing there? How does driver retention play a role in transitioning ownership from one trucking company to another?
Well, I think you bring up a great point that part of the goal of an acquisition is often to grow a fleet because the market is so tight right now. And a lot of companies will say, oh, we're too busy to capture driver feedback during this time. We just have so many things to sort out with our deals. But if the big focus of that deal is to grow your driver fleet and you're not trying to figure out from day one in that transition, what does it take to keep these people that are part of this asset that we're bringing on, then you're depreciating this company that you just purchased. So it's really important for companies to understand what are drivers thinking and feeling during the transition and after. Because in the feedback that we see drivers asking, like, what logo is going to be on the side of the door when I step in the truck? Who are the personnel that I'm going to report to? Is it the same people or new people? Are my benefits going to change? Is the company in good health because of this acquisition? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? And what we know is that human nature is that in the absence of information, people are going to expect the worst and create their own perception. And perception is reality. So if companies are transitioning or acquiring another organization, it's really important for them to map out how are we controlling the message in this time of change.
So let's talk about that for a minute. How important is that feedback loop? How important is it for it to be anonymous in terms of you trying to get information?
Well, in trucking especially, there's a fear of retaliation that exists in this industry. And it may not be because of your organization. It could be that somebody had a bridge burned at 1, 2, or 3 organizations before they came and worked with you. And now they're here and they just have a lack of trust. So you're starting at a point where they're like, okay, prove to me that I can trust you versus immediately trusting from day one. So it's really important to start off at a place where there's a safe space to share honest feedback and then build trust from there. And that's a big reason why we built Workhound the way we did, is that there wasn't trust when somebody joined. They steadily build it, and that helps build confidence that they can share honest insights with a company and not worry about retaliation.
That's great. So what's one thing that a trucking company right now could do, it's actionable, to increase driver retention?
Oh, the one thing, outside of making sure they have a process to listen to their people, act on their issues, and close the feedback loop and tell them what they did. Of course, I'm a big fan of that. It's just aligning expectations, making sure that when somebody joins the company, they're aligned on what is the pay and how is the pay structured and when does it happen? What is our communication style? What is our home time? How do you request that? And then what is the equipment setup? And then continue to check back in regularly to make sure, are we aligned on expectations? And if companies are doing that and then correcting things when something goes off, then good things will happen. It's a lot of work. Like blocking and tackling can be a lot of work, but it's an incredibly powerful exercise if companies just get aligned from day one with their new team members.
So excellent feedback, excellent insight. What about the folks? I mean, because of COVID, a lot of disruption in terms of just bringing in new drivers to the profession itself. So what kind of challenges is this creating for owners of trucking businesses? What can they do about it?
Well, first, you're certainly pointing out a glaring thing that's happened over the past year. There hasn't been the expected amount of new drivers entering the industry because of CDL training schools being behind or certification testing being behind. There's a backlog right now. So if there's a shortage of new people entering the industry, a company's best bet is to patch up that leaky bucket as quick as possible. And so it starts with the retention. How do we go overboard to make sure we keep our best people and make sure we are the carrier of choice? Because historically, companies have leaned towards recruiting. It's what you can measure, and they know if I throw a bucket of money in recruiting, here's the output I'm going to get. Historically, retention is harder to measure. But right now, you see companies throwing a bunch of pay incentives to try to recruit new people to stay on. But pay is like sugar water. It's not going to get you the desired result in the long run.
Oh, I love that. So one last question for you, sir, a little wild card. They call Chattanooga the Silicon Valley of trucking here. So let's talk about forward futurist thinking. What is the number one podcast that you would recommend to folks in the transportation logistics space right now?
Oh my goodness. So I would have to say the Dynamo Podcast, and it's put on here by one of our investors out of Chattanooga, the Dynamo venture capital firm, and they are future thinking as far as what does the future of the supply chain look like. And they have great conversations. So that'd be something I'd recommend people look into.
And that is the advertisement for Dynamo right there. No joke. Those guys are really great thinkers for this industry. And also Mr. Farrell falls in that category as well. Thanks for all that you're doing for our industry. Thanks for being in the hot seat with us. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time.